Hola, feliz Viernes. I'm Rory. Today's Friday, and I'm super glad to be with you. If you've been keeping up with this video Viernes group and Facebook, you've realized that I've been out of town for the last couple weeks on medical Spanish immersion. So I decided to pre-record this one today because my family has not been whole together for over a month now. My wife started with the group in Nicaragua for 2 weeks, and I was here at home single dadding it with the kids. And then we switched places, and I went to Costa Rica, and she passed the baton of the program to me, and I picked up there, and she came home, and she's been single momming it for 2 weeks. And so we're back. The older two had the day off today from school, so we pulled the runt out of classes and headed up to the mountains. So by the time you watch this, I'll be skiing in the beautiful white snow mountains of Colorado. So anyway, today I want to talk about good charity. And throughout life, you come across situations where you want to give, and the thought maybe crosses your mind on occasion, man, is that giving really helping, or am I enabling something, or is there a better way to help? So this is a particularly, relevant topic. We just came back from Central America on our immersion programs, and it's not uncommon to see people in destitute situations on the street and to have the heartstrings tugged so hard and to just want to give. But at the same time, you're like, man, is that helping, or is this a part of a bigger problem? So when I travel, I like to read because I've got downtime on the plane. I've been reading 2 books related to this topic, and I wanted to share some highlights from these 2 books, because if you're spending time and energy working on your Spanish, you probably have a charitable heart as well. And I wanted to share some topics from these 2 books. Toxic Charity, what I've been reading. This one I blazed through. It was written perfectly at my level, like 8th grade reading level. And this other one, When Helping Hurts, is a bit more like a dissertation, so I'm still making my way through this one. I love the content, but I'm not as fast with this one. Both of these books, if you're interested in them, both of them have a Christian perspective. And so if you can swallow that, great. Buy these books, read them, you will love them. If you're not interested, I think the principles still stand. So that's what I'm hoping to do today, is to kind of glean some of the principles out of these books on what good giving really is. So one of the first topics, and we deal with this in Nicaragua and Costa Rica, what is relief and what is development? The idea that, okay, relief is not the same as development. And in some situations, when the situation or environment requires development and you give relief, you might be exacerbating a problem. So in short, relief does for others. Development takes the long view and enables others to do for themselves. Relief improves conditions, whereas development strengthens capacities. Relief gives a fish, development teaches someone to fish. We know the cliche, right? Relief treats the symptom, development addresses the root cause. And this is much like in a medical sense, where if you were to give just pain medications to the person with a severe infection, yeah, you'll take away the pain, but the infection grows and gets worse and deeper and more dangerous, right? So you have to treat the infection in order to help the pain go away for good, right? A good example is the World Bank post-World War II. And this, When Helping Hurts, presents the situation that the World Bank was in after Europe was basically in rubble, and the underdeveloped world was also destroyed. And so the World Bank decides to looks at Europe and looks at the underdeveloped world that's been affected by the wars, and they decide to make huge investments in both. Well, in Europe, it paid off. It was successful in Europe. That infusion of cash helped the system of trade, economy, and the infrastructure rebuild such that people could get back to work and economies could get back online. However, in the underdeveloped world, it failed. Why? Because there wasn't the same amount of infrastructure in place. Yes, they were suffering from material poverty at the time. However, the cause, yes, and it was exacerbated by the war, but the cause was deeper. The cause was more the level of development, the foundational principles and systems that were not in place, that when that infusion of cash came from the World Bank, it didn't help. In fact, it ended up lining the pockets of some oppressive rulers. So it's a good case in point where if you don't treat the real cause, you can make a problem worse. So this book, the fast one, really had a handful of poignant quotes in it and things that were really good takeaways that I wanted to share with you. First of all, what Americans avoid facing is that while we're very generous in charitable giving, much of that money is either wasted or actually harms other people it's targeted to help. And it calls out this idea that good intentions don't necessarily produce the desired or good results. When we do for those in need what they have the capacity to do for themselves, we actually disempower the people in need instead of truly helping them. Giving to those in need what they could be gaining from their own initiative, their own work, may well be the kindest way to destroy people. When you think about that a little bit, when you do things for people that they could do for themselves, you're not helping them at all. When you see a need, there's no simple or immediate way to discern the right response if you don't have a relationship with the person or the community or that situation. So from the outside, you see a need, there's really no way to know if money's the right response, if other material items are the right response, or if education's the right response, or if something else. Continuing on here, a hunger-free zone might be possible, but developing a dependency-free zone is the real challenge. Getting at the idea of you oftentimes helping creates some dependencies. It might alleviate the hunger, but it creates some dependencies. To the extent the poor are unable to participate in the system intended to serve them, their self-worth is enhanced. And so when you have the opportunity to involve the community you're trying to help or the individual you're trying to help in their own solution, you improve their self-esteem, and that puts them on a good track. Little affirms human dignity more than honest work. One of the surest ways to destroy self-worth is subsidizing the idleness of able-bodied people. Work is a gift, it's a calling, and a human responsibility. I like this quote a lot. The poor, no matter how destitute, have enormous untapped capacity. Find it, be inspired by it, and build upon it. I like these last couple because it's actually the last three, because they kind of start to open the window a little bit or the door a little bit to see, okay, well, it's easy to kind of to see what not to do, but what to do. And these kind of begin to give us an idea of what positive actions we can take or framework we can have at least. So this book also puts together some interesting guidelines for helping. I love them. And they come with some stories. So first of all, never do for the poor what they have or could have the capacity to do for themselves. And the book presents a story of two wells. One story empowers a community and the other story creates a dependency. Let's start with a dependency. Okay, a mission group goes into a community and they see these women carrying jars of water on their heads for hours a day through the hot and the dust and the difficult heat of the area they're in. But they have to go hours to go get this water so that they can bring it back and have fresh water for their families. They're not close to water. And so this group says, these guys need a well. Boom, done. Raise the money, come back, dig the well, pipe it to the houses, and solution in place. Well, they go back the next year because it's an annual thing that they do. They go back the next year, and on their way into town, they see women carrying jugs again. Like, what's going on? What happened to the well? So they get there, they talk to the community leaders, and the community leaders tell them that they're not really sure what happened, but the well broke, it stopped working, and so they had to start carrying water on their heads again with these jugs. Well, okay, so the mission group decides, okay, well, they figure out what the problem is, they diagnose it, they get it fixed, the well's back online, everyone's happy, and their trip's over, they head back home. Well, sure enough, the next year on their way into town, women are carrying jugs again, and they finally throw up their hands like, what's going on? Well, the well broke again, but no one in the community had enough knowledge or had the idea that they could probably fix it. And so it remained broken until the next year when the group came back. Same well project, different community, different organization sponsoring it. Now it's a micro-lending organization that says, this is a different community. So they don't know each other. This community needs a well. These people don't have access to fresh water. Well, what are we going to do? Well, we could build it for them, but they decide, no, let's not do that. Let's give them a template. Let's give them a guideline. Let's help them do it for themselves. And so what they do is they loan the money they create a community business, a community organization that's going to drill this well. So they lend to this community organization. The community organization has some community leaders in it, and they employ people in the community to dig the trenches that pipe the water to the houses, and they have a local person dig the well. And so the community is taking care of this with finances from this micro lending organization. Okay, so at every step of the way, the community is involved in building this well. And so when the water starts flowing, everyone's super excited. Everything's going great. Everyone's got water to their homes. Every family's paying a little bit into service this well, and people own this well. So when it breaks, they fix it. And sure enough, over the course of just a couple of months, the community realizes, wow, we have more water than we need. And they start selling water to neighboring communities. And this well project that started with a loan, it wasn't a gift, it was a loan that people took ownership of, paid back, and that now has become a community business, and they're supplying water to the communities in their outskirts of their local community. Two totally different stories, the exact same project, but drastically different results, because they were able to do it for themselves. They just needed the direction, basically. Okay, so limit one-way giving to emergencies. And I've got a personal story for you. What started with tamales years and years ago has now come to the point where Leslie, my wife, and I are thinking, man, is this truly a crisis, or is this something chronic? Let me tell you the story. Years ago, our kids go to a bilingual school, and so one of the moms was selling tamales one year. And this was years ago. So we started buying some tamales, and it was great. Tamales were good. We loved supporting the family. It was awesome. Well, a few months later, Christmas was coming around, and that mom tracks down my wife, Leslie, at school one day and says, hey, can you help with some Christmas gifts? We're short on money this year, and if you could do something, that would be great. So we talk about it a little bit, and we're not newbies to this kind of stuff. So we were thinking through some, possibilities and stuff. So we were like, yeah, we could do that. And so we talked to some friends from church, and a little group of us, we decide, yeah, we're gonna get a list of things that the family needs, and we're gonna go do some shopping together, and it'll be fun, and we'll take the gifts to the family. So we do that, and it's a great Christmas. Everyone's happy. Everyone feels good. And then as the new year rolls in, Leslie, my wife, starts working with the mom. She's asking, okay, well, if you're struggling, how can we help? What are some things that you can do, we can help you do to get some more income. And so we can print a lot of stuff here at the office, and we'd be glad to print some flyers for you if you want to do some cleaning. The mom wanted to clean our house. We're like, no, we don't really need a house cleaner. And so she said, no, you're not going to clean our house, but we can help you, get out there and put some flyers in English, and even help you go visit some homes and get some new cleaning jobs. Just didn't go over very well. Didn't really stick, let's say. And but sure enough, next Christmas came around and needed more help with Christmas gifts. So okay, yeah, we'll do that. So we do the list again. Everyone feels good. And then the process just kind of keeps repeating. And we start to think, gosh, and it's still not 100% resolved today. I feel bad about it, but you try to help and whatever. So we come to the question, gosh, what we first thought was a crisis at Christmas time has really turned out to be a chronic dependency. I mean, this last year, my wife went to deliver some presents. We're like, oh no, she called, and we haven't heard from her in months, but she called around Christmas time, and she wasn't even at the house when my wife went to deliver the presents, and the husband smelled like alcohol. It was just really bad. It was just bad everywhere. It left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, and like, you know what, this is chronic. We have to find a new solution. So anyway, limit one-way giving to emergency is best when there's a give and take, much like the well story, right? Okay. Empower through employment, through lending, investing, use grants sparingly, because grants are one way, no accountability. But employment, lending, investing, when you're in this category, there's systems in place to hold people accountable, and you give people the value of work. You give them the blessing of work. There is intrinsic value of work, and good micro lending versus dependencies created when money is gifted. So where gifting is the norm, whole geographies can remain undeveloped and dependent. There's a story in this book with that same microlending organization who hasn't been able to get into certain geographies in Nicaragua. Why? Because those areas are full of people just giving money for free. And so why would someone take a loan when they can get free money? All right, our next guideline, subordinate self-interest. I mean, it is a reality that short-term missions or short-term helping, whether it's local or abroad, really does feel good, and it changes you as a helper, as a participant. However, the giver's development also always must be secondary to the receiver's needs. And so it would be an inappropriate flip to put your own needs or the giver's needs above those of the community that's being served. Listen closely, especially to what's not being said. This one's kind of tricky and very hard to do outside of a relationship with someone. So that project or opportunity that people aren't committing to or taking full advantage of that you've really worked hard to pull off, what's keeping them from your help? Well, maybe you put on a community outreach event or something, and it's less attended than what you would have hoped, and you just sit back and you wonder why didn't anyone tell you that it was at the wrong time of day for the average family in the area or something like that. Well, maybe someone didn't feel that they had, they didn't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, or didn't want to tell you that they thought there was a better way to do it, or something that was more better aligned for the community, let's say. They felt maybe a little intimidated by the group doing the project, that it had to be on the group's terms, not necessarily what's best for them. Or, another simple example is having it in a location that is tough to get to if you rely on public transportation or something like that. So it's things that people might feel intimidated to say, or feel like, gosh, they're doing so much work for us. How could I How could I give them some constructive criticism? It's important to have a relationship such that you can ask those questions and, what are your hesitations? What are your concerns? What do you think? How could we do this better? That kind of thing. So, and we all know this one, above all, do no harm. So this gets back to the idea that good intentions don't eliminate the possibility of unintended consequences. Those happen also. This second book, When Helping Hurts, talks about 4 core relationships that we all have. And as humans, we all have 4 kinds of relationships. We're relational beings. We're meant to be in community. And we have 4 primary categories of those relationships. First of all, relationship with the spiritual. All of humanity across time has had an interest in things beyond themselves, beyond what can be seen. And so it's very natural to have some kind of spiritual connection. So that's one of the core relationships that, even though some people deny it, it's still a core relationship. Relationship with self. People have relationships with, their own thoughts about who they are and their own esteem, etc. Relationship with loved ones, people in your circle, your tight community, that whether that's your family or your close friends, these are people that you do life with. Sometimes you choose them, sometimes you don't. And then relationship with the rest of the world. Could be bigger institutions, governments, communities that you live in that aren't your part of your tight circle. Could be the environment that you live in, the heat, the cold, etc. But these are outside of your tight circle, but they still have an impact on you. And this book proposes that in reality, poverty is linked to a broken relationship somewhere. So poverty is linked to some kind of broken relationship. And it's a pretty compelling case. The solution, if that's true, the solution must be focused on the actual cause, on the relationship problem, not necessarily on the material problem or the symptom of the problem. So it then goes through and explains some causes of poverty and the relevant solutions to those. So one cause of poverty would be lack of knowledge, just not knowing, for example, how to plant those seeds, to grow those crops, to have a food source. Okay, well, where that's the case, educate. Education is the solution, right? Simple solution, education. Not fast maybe, but simple. Another possible cause is in the relationship with the world at large, oppression by powerful people. And so where systems, governments, institutions are taking advantage of other people, then you must work for social justice. We see this a lot in our communities today across the United States, working against systemic oppression. And it's a real cause. Lack of knowledge is a real cause of poverty. And you know what? I feel like sometimes we focus on this one so much, at least in our North American society, that sometimes we forget that some people at times also make just some personal bad decisions. And that causes poverty. So when that's the case, the solution is to mentor the individual or to mentor the community to show a better way of doing things, right? A healthier way of doing things. And then finally, it is true that some causes of poverty are simply lack of material resources. And when that's the case, you provide what's lacking. That's kind of like what happened in Europe with the World Bank after World War II. The problem was that buildings and manufacturing sites were destroyed. And once that was rebuilt, economy's back online. So, but this isn't the primary one, right? So providing what's lacking tends to be our gut response to seeing poverty, providing food, providing clothing, providing money. But if the problem is one of these, then you just double down on problems with more money. Let's see what happens. So when you miss the mark with helping, like throwing material resources at all forms of poverty, you cause and maybe exacerbate the problems that are happening. So specifically, if you were to throw money at lack of knowledge, in this lack of knowledge situation, the same needs come back when the money runs out. There's a repetitive cycle of need versus getting out of that need that education would help provide people getting out of that situation. So if you throw money at a situation where there's oppression by power, all that does is invite more abuse and empowers the oppressors oftentimes, right? We've all heard the stories of tyrannical rulers who skim money off of international aid and become ridiculously wealthy to the tune of their own country's national debt kind of thing. That's what happens when you throw money at systems that are oppressive. And when you throw money at bad decisions, you just deepen poverty and you up the ante and you make more and more expensive bad decisions. So that's not a solution either. Okay, so some of the insights to kind of summarize, we're winding down, but to kind of summarize insights for me about responsible helping. And these are things that we try to keep in mind, and we definitely guide us as we work with different communities abroad on our medical immersion programs or our immersion programs for educators, whatever kind of work we're doing. So first of all, the idea that we have to recognize that most causes of poverty end up creating material poverty as well. So these other causes of poverty will end up over time looking like material poverty. But if you only see the material, you'll miss the root cause. So you have to focus on the root cause of the problem, not just the symptom, which oftentimes looks like material poverty. Okay? In order to do that, you have to build relationships. You can't provide or be a part of a solution outside of relationships. It just doesn't work because you don't have the insight you need in order to be a real help. Once you have that relationship, your focus, your efforts should be on development, not on relief. Relief has its place when there are moments of crisis, but if you treat everything as a moment of crisis, you create a chronic dependency, and that's that might be what's happened with our tamale situation. Partner with people who have a relationship in a community if you don't have a relationship. This one's actually really important for international work. There's no way you can have a relationship, a long-term and deep relationship with communities across the world. And so what you have to do is make sure that you're partnering your efforts or your team's efforts are integrated very well with the efforts of a local organization that has a real pulse on the community that you're working in. So, and whenever possible, do with instead of doing for. The idea of co-working with others, with collaborating, with working side by side, honoring that people have untapped capacity within them. They just maybe need an opportunity to use it, and maybe a little bit of help getting to the place where they can really let their abilities grow and flourish. Okay, well, that's it for today. I'm looking forward to being back with you again next week, and we will, I promise, be back in Spanish next week. But muchas gracias. Para más oportunidades con el español, visítenos en commongroundinternational.com. Hasta luego.